A book eater? I hardly know her. I'm a genius, 100% original joke. Do not steal. I'm aware. I inspire. The Book Eaters is a fantasy novel by Sunyi Dean, I hope I pronounced that correctly, about a reclusive group of magical or possibly alien, it's not really established, people known as book eaters. These people, as you might imagine, consume books as a form of sustenance. They absorb the knowledge, information, whatever, to basically become like walking libraries, which sounds pretty flippin' neat. However, they are incapable of writing things down, which honestly, that would like be way too broken if any of these people went to real school, because they could just like eat a textbook and then ace literally everything. Anyways, the story follows our main homegirl, Devin, from adolescence all the way up to not adolescence, and her traumatic journey dealing with the awful, repressive people that are the book eaters. These people do the very normal and very okay thing of taking book eater women and forcing them to have a set number of babies because they need to preserve the lineage of the book eaters and make sure that the race continues. Again, very non-problematic. At one point in the story, Devin has a little baby boy who is not a book eater, but a mind eater. As you might expect, instead of eating books, they eat minds. I think I was going to make some kind of joke. Don't worry, there's an ass eater joke coming.
Hey, editing Noah here. I realized that in my flurry of unhinged rambling, I forgot to actually put this joke into the video because this is completely unscripted. So here's the joke. Ass eater, I hardly know her. You're welcome. Back to the video.
And that's the book. That's the book. And I'm sure many of you are thinking, oh my God, Noah, holy bejesus, that sounds like such a really sick concept, the book eater. The book eater thing sounds like a really innovative and really cool means of almost having like a meta commentary on books and how we absorb information and integrating that into a fantastical race. I'm sure there's a lot of nuanced discussion and exploration into how their society works, into how that affects people, any like, you know, supernatural elements that may occur. I'm sure because this book eater concept is going to be very fleshed out, it will absolutely just blow my mind with how necessary to the story that it actually is. You sweet summer child, I was like you once. And then I grew up. So right up the bat, I'm just gonna say that if you're here for a really cool, interesting fantasy story that thoroughly explores and gives reason for the existence of this book eater race, you're gonna be real fucking disappointed, bucko. My biggest complaint with this book by far is that the book eaters are such a amazingly cool concept. However, they are completely unnecessary to the broader plot. And at a certain point, you could basically just like replace the whole book eater concept with any other like generic monster type of being, or even remove the supernatural element of the book eaters altogether, and that wouldn't change the plot at all. And book eaters are just kind of like left in the dust. The only reason the book eater concept seems to exist is purely for the knockoff of Mind Eater, which is just way cooler. And that really annoyed me because I wanted more. I felt like, I don't know, did I mislead myself with that? Was I but a blind fool reaching for stars that did not exist? I don't think so, because it's made such a big deal of in the description of the book. Like, I don't know. I just feel misled. I'm gonna keep it real. But outside of that, outside of the whole book eater thing, the rest of the book is a story that follows our very feisty homegirl, Devin, and her quest for freedom from the oppressive regime that is the families, as well as self-actualization for herself and her place in the world, and what motherhood means to her and how she can best support her kid. And Devin is a tough journey. She has a real tough journey. A lot of really just bad, terrible things happen to her, and broadly, a lot of them are very well written. How she interacts with the families, how going through having children in this context works, and how it affects her as a character, kind of the things that she learns to kind of grow and become a stronger, more independent person is generally pretty good. Outside of that, Devin broadly doesn't have any real defining traits. I feel like she really suffers from a lack of characterization that really makes her feel separate from a whole other host of rowdy, rambunctious women who try to get themselves out of a terrible situation and realize that they have basically been brainwashed. And that definitely made me suffer to completely care about her character. Make no mistake, all that stuff that happened to her was absolute horseradish, pardon my language. But I think I realized that because of kind of the lack of more intricate details we get about Devin, we don't really see her kind of develop more of a personality outside of realizing that her situation is absolute dog water. Again, pardon my language. I think there's a severe lack of smaller character building moments, and I think the complete lack of personality or depth on any of the side characters also play a really big factor in this. Basically, outside of her son, who you could kind of argue is also a main character, all of the characters who she interacts with on the side are basically one-note, boring, and basically only serve to get Devin to the next step in the story. They are mere stairs in this great this metaphor is kind of falling apart. Basically, every character kind of has like their gimmick and their thing, and then they kind of help Devin realize a thing, and then like more or less that's it. With the exception of kind of the last guy, the major lord of a house that they're trying to find for the second half of the book. He's just wasted potential, honestly, but I will get into that later. The world building as well, I think, really suffers from a lack of nuance and depth, really outside of just some, fantasy-esque name for things like naming their enforcer group the Knights, and heavily abused mind eaters that they use as basically attack dogs. They call them dragons. That's basically all of the flavor that you kind of get from the world building, because other than that, they're just another reclusive band of weirdos who avoid human society. Once again, all of the legitimately interesting stuff that comes about as because of them is because of the whole mind eater side thing. It isn't because of the book eaters directly. I feel like you could, again, remove remove book eaters, and nothing would change at all. But boy, do I wish that there was some changes to some of the plot points and some of the structure, because, man, one thing that bothered me about this book, I think, was the pacing and the repetitious nature. The book does that thing where it alternates between one past perspective and one present and or future perspective, present in this case, in order to tell Devin's story in its entirety. This was fine, but I felt myself regularly kind of getting invested into a cool part of the story, and then you're immediately brought back to another boring part that you just don't want to deal with because it feels like the same thing that you've already seen Devin do before. I also think that, in Devin's situation of being, in this regressive cult, having to deal with being a woman in this, there is a certain repetition to the nature of that existence, which I don't have a problem with. Obviously, a oppressed class is going to have a boring, mundane, cyclical life. However, I think in the context of this book and for the sake of the storytelling, I felt like there could have been some improvements both on the pacing and the smaller beats within the larger plot beats. Things felt too familiar. I felt like I knew what was going to happen in a not good, predictable way. instead of a predictable way in which, oh yes, all these intricately laid pieces are coming together in one great amalgamation of storytelling. I just got kind of bored and frustrated because it just felt predictable, honestly. It really did. Again, predictability, not bad. If you can tell when something is coming and it logically makes sense, then that structure, that story that the author has made is great. That shit bangs. But when it feels predictable to the point of monotony, and because there is a lack of nuance, then it's poopy. That can be a hard line to really cross, and the author was like almost there. They were like almost there. They were almost there with a lot of things, right? And that's my biggest complaint here, is that there's so much potential for this book. There's so much at its core that is just like inherently a good and compelling idea. But it felt like a lot of the items within this book, a lot of the story beats and the characters, and a lot of the just concepts, again, around like just the world and the book years, oh, they could have been so cool. But instead, things just felt like a little thrown together, and the lack of strength on both sides just kind of made both sides feel worse. It's spoiler time, baby. Wahoo, yippee. Yeah, we love spoilers. Yahoo. It's me, Chris Pratt. Someone puts a pipe bomb in a toddler in this book, and I gotta say, that shit's fire. The book eaters are such a waste. Oh my god. Like, so they are basically just like definitely not vampires. Like, they have book teeth that come out, definitely not fangs. When they munch on those tomes, they have super strength and super speed for some reason. They also have night vision, I guess. However, they don't have any like physical deformities or whatever outside of like, partially being inbred. So that's why the women go through early menopause, which is why they need to have 2 children like as soon as they can, and why those weird marriage contracts happen for the good of the people, I guess. But they can just like be in human society if they want. Like, they don't look different, they don't sound different, they aren't like particularly tall or short compared to the normal person. It just doesn't really feel like there's a solid reason for why they are reclusive outside of basically the plot point of them being some like, weird old cult type group of guys, which is required in order to, make the plot point of Devin, being forced in these terrible situations and having to be a baby machine and then biting a guy's throat out. It's just like, I don't know. Again, like, I feel like the whole idea behind the book eaters was just like, oh my god, this is so fucking cool. Let's just put this in the book and then roll with it. But the rolling did not happen, particularly with it. As I said before, the book eaters, like, you could completely remove them from the plot and basically nothing would happen. Like, you could remove them in the sense of that like birth restriction and just make it so like women in this reclusive human society are women in a reclusive human society, which are very susceptible to being brainwashed and controlled and being forced to just pump out all those babies. I just didn't really buy it. There's never any like explanation, any concrete explanation as to any reason why the book eaters are the way that they are, or even why they exist. Could they be magic? Could they be aliens? Like, there's some very brief mention of some mysterious figure known as the Collector who maybe like put them on there to like eat books and like collect knowledge or whatever. But again, all of these things are like a sentence, and there is no further elaboration for why they exist. There is no elaboration for why mind eaters, that branch of book eater, can exist, even though mind eaters, as I've said, are just so much more interesting. What's really cool about the mind eaters is when they eat a person, when they slurp on those brains with their proboscis tongues, they absorb part of that person within them. And you can see in certain situations with like mind eater characters, like with Kai or definitely with Killick, how those personalities come through. Like, there are multiple points in the story with Kai where things come out of his mouth. He talks about like old soap operas that he used to like that are from like 30 years ago, but this is the personality of some like old drunk that he ate. Like every now and then like a Bible verse comes out, and that's from like a vicar that he ate. Hearing him talk about like how he feels like the amalgamation of 25 people that he has eaten, and he doesn't even know if like he has a real personality or if he is just a golem comprised of all of these different people's minds that he's eaten. It's a really interesting, fascinating concept. I was significantly more invested in Kai's circumstance and outcome than Devon's necessarily. And so probably the best way to describe my sympathies and my appreciation of Devon as a character would be I have a lot of sympathy for her situation, but I don't really care that much about her as a character. Like, I don't feel like there was enough smaller moments or more intimate character traits added to her that made her feel distinct from any other rambunctious young woman who was trying to escape a terrible situation. Like, there's one scene where she's, out in the world after escaping her second husband and hanging out with her kid, and she gets a bunch of books from the bookstore about like sex and sexuality and the world and like kink and shit, and then she eats them, and there's just like a paragraph or something about how like, oh, her worldview has expanded or whatever, and then like that's it. Like that was her growth and learning more about the human world despite being like a recluse from it the entire time. And that just felt really hand wavy, and I just didn't really like it. Like, I wanted more intimacy there, particularly since Devon does find out that she's a big old gay. And speaking of gay, Hester, good lord. Okay, I was like, all right, this lady's got some sass in the bar, like potentially hinting that she likes some lady on the side. Same. But it ended up with her just like basically being created specifically so Devon could tell her the things that she got told to kind of, break her out of the whole spell of being a tool for these crazy houses. And Hester was that to her. And also the love interest, which like I didn't love the fact that, there's very little like intimate conversation with them a lot, and stuff is happening, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, after Hester gets shot with a fucking crossbow, Devon's like, oh, shut up. And then moo, moo, moo. And then they kiss, and then everything's fine, and then they run away again. I don't know. I felt like I wanted more out of the gay, just like I wanted more out of everything else. Shout out to Jero for being a cool guy, and the asexual representation is Pog. Transitioning from Jero, the marriages that she has to go through in order to have these babies, basically how they work. Book eater women are forced into these marriage contracts, which are enforced by knights, which are kind of a separate group of book eaters who are basically enforcers / cops, ACAB, and they take the women and they go to the other house, and then they're married to one of the alpha males from that house, and then they fuck and they have a baby, and then they hang around for a couple years to like breastfeed the kid with their like ink milk or some shit. And then they fuck off, and then they have another baby, and then they can't have babies anymore, and then they just become like cool wine aunts to all their kids that they literally never see. And I'm just gonna say it right here. Devon should have hated her first kid. I think, again, my problem with a lot of the story beats was the repetitious nature of it all. I really did not like that so much of the second instance of her being married felt so familiar to the first. Like, I wish that there was some different kind of emotional reaction in one of the two times. Like, Devon is scrambling to get her kid both times, but I feel like there would have been a little bit more dramatic of a character shift and a growth moment after the second kid if she almost got like postpartum depression or something after having that first kid, because like book eater women are raised to be like, I'm fulfilling this duty. I'm supposed to be having a kid. The kids are great, blah, blah, blah. And then Devin gets like super attached to this kid. It just feels like it having 2 times in a row kind of lessens the impact, I suppose. Like, I understand what the author was doing. I understand that, if she gets attached to this kid now, then she's like, oh no, I'm going to have to be taken away from this kid. That's bad. I hate this system. It is mean. It is bad. I want my child, please and thank you. But the fact that it happened twice, I think, really didn't make it feel like, I don't know, that much of a growth point, or like that much of a tipping point when it happens to the second kid. Like, maybe if the kid wasn't a mind eater, that would have changed. But I felt like almost some reaction to, Devin having that second kid and realizing that he is a mind eater, and then having that reaction of, oh, wait a minute, this fucking sucks. I don't want my kid, my son, who is this, now oppressed class, to basically go through some similar shit like I go through, because my God, the mind eaters are treated like absolute horseradish, pardon my language. Like, they are traumatized and abused and brainwashed to, become the dragons, to be the attack dogs for the knights. And they sound like some fucked up dudes. Like, there's some scenes where like Devin goes into the dragon lair or whatever it was called, where like they house all of their dragons at the knights fucking castle thing. And like, they're in like pure white rooms. They're like intentionally being sensory overloaded. They're like beaten. They are tortured. They are absolutely not having a great time down there. And the fact that Devin's son could go through something like that is a nightmare scenario. And I think using kind of that realization as kind of like a moment of reflection and almost like retrospection for, oh, wait a minute, the daughter that I had from my first marriage is going to go through the same dog shit thing that I am go through the same terrible trauma that I am going through, and that my brain-sucking son is going to go through. But like, straight up, seems like the mind eaters get a worse deal than popping out some babies. Just saying. And speaking of mind eaters, oh my God. So okay, the big reveal that the Raven Scars, the people that Devin has been trying to find for basically the whole book, a clan of book eaters who have learned to make a drug to deal with the mind eaters. The mind eaters take the drug and they don't have to eat human minds anymore in order to survive. The want to feed is still present, but the need to is not. That is taken away. Power of drugs. Shout out Stratera. God bless. Now, I thought it was very interesting that there was a whole plot point of, what's going to be the deal with the Raven Scars? What's up with that? There was a coup. There's a new guy in charge, a Killick Raven Scar who sounds like a dude straight out of a fantasy porno. Anyway, so we get there, and surprise, surprise, just like the other 2 houses that Devin went to under the guise of marriage, the patriarch is a absolute fucking lunatic. However, his brand of lunacy was a lot more interesting. So what happened was, he's a mind eater. They're all mind eaters there. And basically there was a mind eater coup in the Ravenscar household. They were like, nah. And then they killed everybody. And now the house is run by mind eaters. Wahoo. And Killick ate his dad's brain, which is pretty fucking metal. However, his dad was, a lunatic who kind of hated the mind eaters, despite like making the drug to potentially save his kids who are mind eaters. And because Killick took that personality inside of him, there's some weird shit going on. Now there's a lot of like religious overtones that he has about things. Like, he calls the mind eaters saints. He calls the brain sucking, taking communion. He's gone full mad prophet here. And and that sounds interesting, and like theoretically it is, but the fact that outside of talking to him one time when Devin shows up, there is no interaction with him outside of him doing some weird fucking service in a church where he like sucks out some human's brain and then goes like, amen, hallelujah, and then that's it. And then like that's literally it. And then, you know, after the raid happens, after the knights find the Raven scars like they've been aiming to, there's a whole fight, and then fucking Killer goes goblin mode, and then he dies, and then that's it. And there was a legitimately interesting concept there. Like, again, this character is almost like the dark side version of like what Kai could end up being, and instead we get like one interaction with him, and then he gets yeeted into the abyss. It's just really, really, really unfortunate, honestly. I guess I just wanted more out of the Raven Scar situation. I really just wanted more out of like everything. Ramsey, her brother that she grows up with, and then they do some dumb kid shit and they piss off the, you know, bitch ass Knight Commander, ACAB. He gets taken off into night school, and not the kind of night school where like, you know, you can take credits after work and then eventually work towards like a fulfilling career. I mean, the kind of night school where they beat the shit out of you to be enforcers for fucked up marriage contracts, where you abuse other people who are mind eaters, and then you force them to be your trauma bonded servants. That kind of night school. And again, Ramsey was just like another fucking lunatic. Like, he did put a pipe bomb in a baby. Like he puts a pipe bomb in Kai as like a threat to make sure Devin like does what she says she's gonna do in helping him track down the Raven scars. And I gotta say, I appreciate a man of his word. And if I was in that situation, I would absolutely pipe bomb a toddler. Like, 100%. But again, he's just like turned into some demented madman. Like, there's a bit at the end after he dies and Kai eats his brain where like the personality of Ramsey comes up from Kai, and there's like a little note about how like, you know, Ramsey didn't blame you for these things, like he's had his own like internal struggles, blah blah blah. But we got to see like none of that throughout the course of the book. We got to see none of that through his interactions with Devin, or through his interactions when we see him like talking with the Knight Commander and the other knights. He just kind of gets his cool scene where he like takes Hester's gun that he found and then just blam, shoots the Knight Commander in the head, and then takes control. And he's the patriarch. He's the big Sigma male of the knights. And it's just underwhelming because then, you know, at the end, of course, he and Devlin go goblin mode together. They fight, they brawl, and then he dies. And then that's the book. There was so much potential. There was so much intrigue. There was so much interest. There was so much thought put into the base idea of this book. But goodness me, the follow-up. My God, where was it? Where did it go? Did it wander off? Like, what's happening? One other thing I want to say is, honestly, like, despite there being some, you know, good intimate scenes of fucked up shit actually happening, sometimes Devin's narration was, how do I put this? Cringe. Like, there are these certain moments where, like, there are these intense actions and fights and circumstances occurring, but then Devin's narration kicks in, and she just has some, like, really cringe line that just really, really takes me out of it. Like, here's an example when she's, like, walking down the street at night. Devin always had to act like prey and not like the predator she had become. Okay? And then, like, the big climactic scene where she discovers that her son is a mind eater, and her second husband and his weird fucking enforcers are, like, beating the shit out of her after she had, like, basically just given birth, and all this just crazy shit is happening. And then they're, like, beating the hell out of her, and you go, blah, 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 blah. And then this is the paragraph. Stop messing about and tie her up already. Matley bent and picked up a startled Kai by the nape of the neck. I'll deal with the dragon. Wrong. They were wrong. The men called her son a dragon, but she was the only dragon in this room. And it's just like, bruh, I don't know. Like maybe I'm just not the target audience for this book. Like I'm gonna keep it a buck. Like I feel like I was just not the person who was meant to enjoy this particular flavor of literature. I just wanted more. I want something different, and that's partially on me. But my fifis are important, so ultimately I'm right about everything. Final score, I'm gonna give this book a extremely interesting yet underbaked premise out of a she was the only dragon in this room. I'd probably read another book by Sunyi. Like, there was a lot of good ideas in here. Again, like, everything that I had to complain about was a product of the execution. And that shit's hard, but honestly, for like a first book, like I see a lot of potential here. If there's a lot of really good, solid ideas like this from Sunyi in the future, and the other things that she writes, like her execution is only gonna get better. These books are only gonna feel more fleshed out and more coherent. So honestly, I would read something else. I would read something else by her, and I'm gonna keep my eye open. I know I complained a lot. I know I did, but I didn't hate this book. I thought it was fine. It was fine. I might recommend it if it sounds like it's up your alley, but again, you might be heartbroken as I was. Thank you for listening to my objectively correct opinions on this book. I know you feel very blessed. Join the club. No, actually, like, there's a fan club. You join it by subscribing. Promotion.